In 1956, a 13-year-old Bobby Fischer announced his genius to the chess world, winning one of the finest games in the history of chess. In a game full of beauty and surprise, Fischer overcame his much more experienced opponent, the International Master Donald Byrne. Now, I'm a very average chess player, but I do love the game. And even I can appreciate the beauty and surprise in this particular game of Fischer against Byrne. And there's one particular move when Bobby Fischer sacrifices his queen that really stood out and surprised me, because it's a move I would never dream of making, not in a million years. So what's all this got to do with Google Sheets anyway? Well, in this video, we're going to explore chess in Google Sheets and look at how we can build a play it through chess game with a single formula in Google Sheets. And we're going to use this beautiful game from 1956 as our demonstration. So even if you don't love chess or play chess even, there's a lot to take in and a lot to learn with the formulas we're going to discuss today. So I'm really excited to take you on this journey. Let's begin. So I want to just give you a little backstory to how this all came about. I didn't just wake up one morning and decide to try and recreate a chess game with a formula. I'm not that strange. So I was working on this particular blog post. In fact, I was creating this video you can see here about conditional formatting. And what I was doing was reading through all of the comments down at the bottom here of this post. 317 comments. A lot of them are mine, but lots of people saying, how do I do this? Or how do I do that? Gave me loads of ideas to put into that video. But there was one that really piqued my interest. And it was this one here. Clement said, if you need a chessboard, you can use this conditional formatting. So of course I went and did that, and I thought, yeah, that's pretty cool. And it just creates that nice chessboard grid. And then I remember my comment here I left way back in 2021. I remember seeing these chess pieces and realizing or remembering that I could actually create them with formulas in my sheet too. So one thing led to another. I went down the rabbit hole, and an hour or two later I had a formula that created a whole chessboard, just a static chessboard. And I thought, yeah, that's pretty cool. I was pretty happy, pretty pumped. So I went and shared it on LinkedIn, and here it is. There's the formula, kind of this crazy MAKEARRAY, and it prints out the chessboard for you. And a lot of people liked it. 100 plus likes, yay, all good stuff. And most people would just stop there and say that's enough. But of course, I knew that I could not help myself but try and make the pieces move, of course. And I had to try. So I played around with the formula for a little bit more, and lo and behold, we have the game that we can play through. So I'll show you this one here. We can uncheck this, and then we can play through to actually watch the moves happen from that game, and then just reset if we want, and just keep moving them. So, and it's all just done by one formula, this one long formula here. Yikes. So let's explore how this formula works, how it's been built, and we'll do it step by step. And I'm starting here with a very simple list of numbers, 9812, 9813, 9814. So nothing complicated here, nothing going on, just a list of numbers. And the first formula that's important to us is CHAR, char, gets the character associated with a number. Hit enter. Let's fill them all in with autofill. And let me make them just a little smaller actually. There we go. You can see the chess pieces. We can create chess pieces with this char formula. It converts a number into a character. And it just so happens that 9812 is the king, 9813 is the white queen, etc. And then we have the black pieces. So that was step one, realizing that that's possible. Then I'm going to just give each of these a label. So this would be the white king. This would be the white queen. This is a white rook, white bishop. white knight, white pawn, etc. So we give them each just a quick indication, and then I can do the same for the black pieces. So the black king, etc., and just go through and label them. Okay, so that's the basic first principle, is that we have the pieces available. So then all I've gone and done now is put them into a let function. And the way let works is that you define a variable name and then whatever that variable points to. And why I do this is because these numbers are essentially kind of meaningless to me. I can't look at one of these and say, oh yeah, that's a white pawn. But if I have these initials, white rook, white knight, white bishop, white queen, white king, then I know it says WQ, I know that's the white queen. So take that one off at the end there for the moment. So that's our let. They're all of our variables set up. We just added in all of the different pieces with the names. I input them in the order from sort of working across the chessboard, which is why they're sort of not in a sequential order necessarily, but that doesn't matter. Now, at the end here is the formula. So essentially this is where we're going to put the mega formula that's going to just do everything. But for now, I will just pick any piece at random. We'll say the black king. Hit enter, and it's going to give me the 9818. I can say char, and there it is. It turns that into the black king for me. Now, if I say the black king +1, it turns into the queen. If I say the black king -1, it turns into that white bishop. So you can kind of see how by using these notations and adding numbers to or subtracting numbers from, I can do the moves to take pieces in chess. So I can change pieces into other pieces by modifying these numbers. So notice I don't put the char in here yet. I don't do that because really what I want to do is work with these numbers for as long as possible and only convert them into chess pieces right at the end. So the next important formula to understand is the MAKEARRAY. MAKEARRAY generates an array that's 8 by 8, well, however many rows and columns you want, but it happens to be a chessboard 8 by 8. So you define the number of rows, you define the columns, and then you put in this special formula called a lambda formula. It's an anonymous formula that just is executed for each row and column. So each position in this 8 by 8 grid, it will execute this function, and it has access to the row number and the column number of that particular move. So it starts with 1 1, 1 2, 1 3, 1 4, 1 5, 2 1, 2 2, 2 3, 3 4. And it just works through all 64 squares, and you have the value of R and the value of C available in each iteration. So right now I've just said for every single square, just print out the 9814. Hit enter. Now, if I had a chess move happening, I might do a +1 and it becomes the 9815. And of course, at some point, I'm going to wrap it with that char function. There's the bishop. Let's say that that move goes back. It's the white rook. So eventually, inside of here will be some changing numbers that move up and down depending on the move. And the char is sort of this outer function that will convert them at the very last, as I said, into the actual piece required. So sort of putting those two together, what we can do is there's my definition of all of the variables, all of the different pieces. And then right at the end here, I put my MAKEARRAY, only this time, instead of putting a fixed number, I'm going to just call a piece this white rook. And again, I could have the char in there, and then it would actually display the white rook for me. But as I said, we'll leave it open for now because we want to just work with numbers. So that's step one. We basically have the board with all of one piece at the moment. It's all the same piece, but we have the board. So let me copy this formula and we'll go to step 2 and we'll just drop that in. And we'll come in here, and instead of just always printing out the same character, what I'll do is I'll drop in an ifs formula. I'm going to move this onto a new line by pressing Control Enter. Ifs. Now ifs is like an if function, but it has pairs. You do a condition and a value, condition and a value, condition and a value. So we'll say if r equals 1, then give me, let's say, the white rook. If r equals 2, give me the white pawn. And then we also just need to say, for everything else, we can do that by just putting the word true. We want to say for everything else, just give me, let's say, 0 for now. And there we go. Now it's printing out just the 9814 across the top there, the 9817 across the bottom there, and zeros everywhere else. So we're able to control what this shows, the output, what it looks like, by using this ifs here. Now I can also put in and here and categorize or clarify what the row and the column, because obviously we don't want the white rooks across the whole thing. So I can say, look, it has to be row 1 and column 1 to give me the white rook. And then I'll hit enter. And you see now everything else is zeros, but there's the 9814. So you can see how I can kind of build up the board by having this ifs and just saying, depending on the position within this 64 grid, put the correct piece there. So let's just go jump to this formula now. So there's, again, my definitions that we've seen, make array. Here's the ifs and r equals 1. So row 1. And then I'm saying for the column, I'm using this formula, this function called choose, which just takes the value, takes a position, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then outputs whatever the value is. Let's open it out. It returns the element from a list of choices. That's a much better way of saying that. Okay, so it returns the element from a list of choices. So my choices are, I just give it all of my chess pieces as my choices. So it's black rook, black knight, black bishop, black queen, black king, black bishop, black knight, black rook. And then I just say the value of C, the column changes. So when column 1, it's a black rook. Column 2, it's a black knight. Column 3, it's a black bishop. I'm always on row 1 because I've specified row 1. So then row 2, I'm saying it's always the black pawn. I don't care about the columns. Rows 3, 4, 5, 6, just print a 0. Row 7 is the white pawns. And then row 8, again, use this choose to set a value for each column number. And these, remember, these are just pointing again back up to here, and it goes up to here, and it just grabs the corresponding number to whichever chess piece I'm talking about. So the output of all of this one is essentially my chessboard, but just as a numeric version, if you like, just as numbers. So 9820 and so on and so forth. So that's the setting the board up. We're very close now to setting the board up. So let's copy this, come to step 3 and just paste in here. Whoops, let me make these smaller. Say 14. Okay, so again, this is just my formula I've put in here. And as you know, what we need to do now is actually display chess pieces, not just these numbers. So we'll wrap the ifs with the char. And great, look at that, it now displays my chess pieces. But obviously those zeros, function char parameter 1, value 0, it's out of range. You can't have a char 0, and we don't want to have a char 0. Anyway, we want these to be blank. So it's really easy to get rid of a blank. We can just put if error around the char. So we'll just enter that, enter, and now all of those just become blank cells, which is great. So that's essentially my board now built with a single formula. And that's a much nicer formula than the original formula I worked out that I shared on LinkedIn. This is now a much better one because I'm using these nice definitions of the pieces and then just setting the board up in a more elegant way. So the last thing I'll show you with this one is what we can do, and this is something that's quite handy for going forwards because it gets really quite large quite quickly, this formula. I want to put some comments in my formulas to say this is move 1, this is move 2, this is move 3, etc. And I want to just designate this as the start position, if you like. So what I can do is I can say, show you this formula n, the argument provided as a number. So what's the argument provided as a number with this? What is the number start? It's just a 0. So I can leave comments like this. That start, this would be move 1, and they're all going to be zeros. So what I can do is, with that knowledge, I can take this, come down in here, and if you remember, if I just remove that again for the moment, I need to take off the brackets here at the end as well. We're all talking about numbers. So what I can do is add that there, because it's just a 0, that's just a 0, remember, to each of those numbers, and it doesn't change those numbers. So then I can wrap this with my char and my if error, and that just tells me, oh, this is the start position, say, and sets them all up, but it also just adds that comment in for me so that I know that this particular section here is my starting position. All right, so after an awful lot of work, we have a static chessboard. We better find out how we can make it move, right? So let's copy it. So we'll come into a new tab, step 4, and drop it in here. And I'm going to just zoom out a little so we can find a bit more space for this formula. And I'm going to take off the chess pieces for the moment, and I'll explain why. So I'll just remove the char and the if error, those two. So we just go back to our numbers, because it's a lot easier to understand what's going on when we just have these numbers. And we have the ifs here. And this produces these numbers, 9820. And if you remember, if we add or subtract to these numbers, then it's like changing the position or changing the chess piece. And we can, similarly, we can add or subtract to these ones. So we can move these pieces about. Let's see how. We finish off the ifs, and then we're going to do a control enter to come onto a new line, and we're going to add if, and we say E3, this square here, is greater than 0, 1, otherwise 0. Okay, so they're just back to the regular squares now. So first of all, let me just put a char to the side here so we can also see sort of a chess piece, what that looks like. So the rook there. So now what I say, so that's what this piece here would actually be if I have the char. If I say, okay, we move to game 1, it goes to 9821, that changes it to the bishop. So we can move our pieces around. So we need to be a little more sophisticated than just this giving everything a 1. So what we'll do is, if you remember, we have the values of R and C still. So we'll say if again, and we'll say and R row 3 and C equals 1. I'll explain where that is in a moment. Then we'll put the black pawn, otherwise a 0 again. We're just going to nest that inside. So let me put us back to 0 on the game. So move 0. And let's do a char for this one. And then, of course, we're going to wrap it with the if error. Okay, so we have I'm going to see a piece here. So when I go to move 1, there we go. You see it now changes this one into that pawn. When I go back to move 0, that disappears to move 1. So that there is going to become the pawn. Of course, we need this one now to become a 0, because we want that pawn to effectively jump forward 1 square. So let's go back here and see how we might do that. So what I'm going to do is change this to an ifs. Let's get rid of these for the moment and take off all of these end ones here. So that's my first pair of conditions. What I want to do now is say and This time row is 2. We want the second row. Column is still 1. And I want to say this time, I want to subtract whatever the value is. It was minus 9823. And then, of course, because we're using the ifs, we need to do that everything else. So all the other values of R and C just change to a 0, because then when I add this to here, it'll just add zeros in all of the other R and C positions. So let's see where we're up to. So we'll close off the ifs there, hit enter, and go back to 0, move 0. And watch this square here. I'm going to make it green, and I'll make this other one here purple. And I want to see that 9823 jump to that purple square when we go to move 1. Move 1. Look at that. It moves to 9823 for me. Now, of course, 9823 is black pawn. So instead of writing minus 9823, which I forget what exactly that is, I can say, well, I added a black pawn there in this row 3. I'm going to take off the black pawn for row 2. So minus black pawn. Hit enter. Go back to move 0, check it works. Move 1, move 0, move 1. Perfect. Okay, so let's put the char back in so we can just kind of see this all come together. So put the char, and then of course we need the if error wrapper around the char. Hit enter. Now I'll get rid of these ones down the side here. And now watch our first move, our first chess move. It should jump forward to that one there for me. Oh, look at that. Magic. So our formula now works, and it moves that one forward for me. Okay, so we could just replicate this now. So we want the 2 there. Yep, that's right. And we'll go Control Enter again, and we'll do another line, and this time we'll say E3 is greater than 1. So this first line is when it's greater than 0, that's move 1. When it's greater than 1, it becomes move 2. And this time we'll do row 3 again, but we'll do column 2, and let's move this one forward to row 4. So we'll just stick with the black pawns. I know we should be doing the white move, should have been first, but we've gone with black. That's okay. Let's hit enter and move this up again. Let's go back to move 0. So move 1, move 2. Look, it moved them both. Fantabuloso. And just to just recap, when it's moving greater than there, it adds the black pawn to this particular row 3, column 1, and subtracts the black pawn from row 2, column 1. Then when it then becomes greater than 1, we do the move, we update the array by adding these new numbers. So on row 4 and column 2, we add a number, and then on row 2, column 2, we take off a number. And essentially that's just how we build the entire chessboard. Now, the other thing I'll just show you is, remember N, move 1, that's just evaluates to a 0. So this is how we can add comments to our formulas. So we'll say N, move 1, grab that, copy, come in here, and instead of just putting a plain old boring 0, we'll put that N, move 1, and then we'll put N, move 2 here. And that just makes sure, that just lets me add some commentary to, there's move 1, that row, and there's move 2 for that row. Boom, perfect. Essentially, that's how we build the chessboard. And then the last piece of the puzzle, of course, is just to automate this. Instead of me having to manually type this, that's a bit tedious. How could we automate that? So here we need to do a special thing with our spreadsheet. We need to go up to File, Settings, Calculation, make sure it's on Change and Every Minute, and then make sure Iterative Calculation is on, and it just has an iteration number of 1, so it does 1 iteration. So you need to have both of those set, and just go down here and click Save Settings, make sure they're like that. And in this page here, I have some checkboxes and some special formulas. Actually, I'm going to start with this one. Now, just gives me the timestamp right now. Now, if I take the minute of this equals minute of that, then it just gives me that minute value. You see the 35 there, whatever the minutes are. And because of the settings we just did, we just set it to recalculate every minute. This will update to 36 in a moment. Now, there's another formula that we can use, another formula construction. There you see it went to 36 while we were talking. This one here. And if I type this one in, it'll give me the 36 again. But this one doesn't update. This now fixes at 36. It's like a point in time, a static point in time. So you'll see that this 36 here is going to update increment by 1. There we go, 37, 36. You see how that stayed still? And of course, I just do that minus that number 1. And again, this will update and show me a number 2 in just a moment. So that's the timing. Essentially, this formula is just a little bit more nuanced than that one, just to take account of the actual hours as well. But essentially just keeps cycling through the numbers, and it will just, I'll kick it off now. Every time I uncheck that, it kicks off the whole process. If I check it off, it restarts. So this one down here, if I click, it lets me increment this manually. You can see the number 3 there going up, going up, going up, going up, and then the reset just returns it to 0. I have to uncheck the reset to get things moving again. So essentially this is working because the spreadsheet calculates left to right. And so there's a fraction of a second when these formulas can dictate a discrepancy because the values haven't propagated through the formulas yet. And that's what allows this to climb up increment 1 by 1 by 1. Now this was created or discovered or found or documented by a spreadsheet wizard called Tyler Robertson. And I'll link to Tyler's post below this so you can read it in Tyler's own words. But that will do for us for now, because as long as it's working, we can use it here to increment this if we wish manually. And you can see while I've been talking that these numbers have been climbing up steadily. So all I do is I take either my automatic timer based on the now function, or this manual trick with the checkboxes and the trues and falses, and I can just add those now up at the top of my board. Just have to uncheck there. If I show those now, then, and I move up, I make my board a little smaller. Let's hide that for a second. Then as we watch for a moment now, we should see this will tick up to 1 and we'll see that first move happen. Now remember, this is the exact same let that we've been using all the time. There we go. And there's that first move happening. And you can see that incremented to 1. I can reset if I want, puts it back, and then just uncheck that to kick the game off again. Now the manual one, let's reset. So I have those formulas up here that we looked at. I've got my 2 checkboxes, and this number E3 is just the game counter that the big formula refers to. So I need to uncheck that to get things moving, and then I can just start clicking through to increment the moves and play through the whole game if I wish. Oh, look at that. White takes the black queen. I would have definitely moved my queen out the way. No way I would have sacrificed the queen. And that's why I'm not a grandmaster, for many other reasons as well. All right, folks, this video is long enough, and hopefully you enjoyed that. Hopefully you found it interesting. As I said, lots of really cool, interesting formula techniques to chew on. So go away and dissect the template and see what else you can get from it. All right, folks, thanks very much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon in another video, which will probably be slightly more normal and relevant to the workplace. Ciao. Bye for now.